My goal as a podcast coach is to help you spend as little time as possible on marketing your podcast while still growing your show. Hey, I'm Andi Smiley, and I'm obsessed with helping you grow your podcast without letting it rule your life. I share strategies that actually work, the stuff I wish someone had told me earlier, and conversations with the smartest podcasters I know. One of my favorite marketing tools is Pinterest. If you know me at all, this doesn't come as any sort of surprise. But what might be a bit of a surprise is I didn't set out to become a Pinterest strategist. I was simply looking for a way to grow my podcast without thinking about marketing all the time. Pinterest changed that for me. When I buckled down and got serious about using Pinterest to promote my podcast last summer, my show had a 100% increase in monthly downloads. I promise I checked that number like 3 times because that's mind-boggling. My podcast gained more than 100 email subscribers, and my business had the most successful revenue month since I started podcasting 4 years ago. What surprised me most was how predictable my marketing became. Pinterest rewarded the same things every time: clear messaging, strong keywords, and a solid foundation. And pins that I made years ago are still bringing new listeners to my show. If you want to figure out if Pinterest could be a good fit for you and your podcast, grab my free "Is Pinterest Right for Your Podcast?" checklist. The link is in the show notes. Marketing my podcast is one of those things that I truly used to hate. I don't hate it anymore, and that's because I have 3 tools that help me market my show without letting it take over my life. And I can't wait to share them with you today. So the first one, I feel like this is really obvious, but I have to say it, it's Pinterest. Pinterest is my favorite for so many reasons. Here are the 2 reasons it's one of the best ways to market your podcast. Pinterest users are there to take action, not to be entertained. And Pinterest is a search engine. So you don't have to pray to the algorithm gods to make sure your pin gets seen. Just make sure you're using the right SEO keywords. If you want to learn a little bit more about Pinterest and figure out if Pinterest is a good fit for you, I have an entire episode about it. I will link it in the show notes. The second thing that I use to market my podcast that makes marketing feel less awful is podcast guesting. When you are a podcast guest, you are talking to people who already know how awesome listening to podcasts is. They already know how to use a podcast app, so convincing them to listen to your podcast is so much easier. And one of the really nice things about being a podcast guest is people get a feel for your vibe. They have an idea of what your podcast is going to be like just by listening to you on another podcast. So when they try out listening to your show, they're more likely to stick around because they already know that they like you and your show. I have an episode all about podcast guesting that I'll link in the show notes to give you a little bit more details on how to make it happen if that feels like a good fit for you. The third way that I market my podcast is Threads. I am a bit biased when it comes to Threads. I've noticed that a lot of podcasters use Threads, so I know that my people are already on the app. I love Threads because I can share all of my thoughts simply and easily with just text. It doesn't take me a bunch of time or energy, which is what I need in this stage of life. So if you want to try out Threads for you, I would just hop on and kind of mess around, talk about what your podcast is about, and see how much engagement you get after a couple of weeks. But truly, Threads is so nice because literally today I did all of my threads for the week. I like to do at least one Threads post, or I think they call them threads. Like the post is called a thread. That's still a little confusing for me, but whatever. I do all of my threads on Mondays. I schedule them all out for the week. And then I usually actually end up coming back and posting more just like about my life and just random things that I think about during the week. But I've got that basic thing done on Monday and it takes me maybe 20 minutes. And Threads is where I find so many amazing podcasters who want to learn about marketing your podcast via Pinterest, and it's where I found a lot of my clients. So if you are looking for a way to market your podcast that feels easy and light and like it's not taking over your life, I would try Pinterest, podcast guesting, and Threads. Seriously, these 3 have really helped me to not only grow my podcast, but also grow my business in a way that is easy and light and doable. If this episode opened your eyes to easier ways to market your podcast, would you share it with your podcasting friends who also want to spend less time marketing their podcast? Next week, I will be talking about how to freshen up your podcast with a spring cleaning episode. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week.